everyone, and welcome to your favorite YouTube series. Hey, it's our favorite YouTube series as well. Not Another Demo. We are the only security podcast that guarantees you no marketing jargon, no PowerPoint slides, and no acronyms. So if any acronyms get thrown out during the course of this conversation, we'll stop and ask what those acronyms mean. If we use them, same thing can happen to us. So we try to have a little bit of fun with that. I have with me my counterpart, Mr. Aaron Bregg, the one and only. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Matt, do you really think this is our favorite YouTube series? Do you really have the best guests? Do you really have the most interesting vendors? To which I say, yes, we do. And so with that, it's my privilege to introduce Onri Weinberg. He's a co-founder and CEO at DoControl. And we're going to be talking about SaaS data today, so a very timely and relevant topic. So with that, Onri, I'm going to pass it over to you. The first question that I'd like to ask is, and I love when we have founders on because I get to ask this question is, when you were looking out at the market and wanting to start a new company, certainly first introduce yourself, but explain a little bit of what did you see that was missing in the market or in this particular space that made you decide to start up DoControl?
Absolutely, Matt. But before I answer that, I had a choice. Jimmy Kimmel was the other option, and I choose you guys. So maybe it's one of the best YouTube shows out there.
Nice. I'm up there on Kimmel level. I like it.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me. So my name is Onri Weinberg. I'm Israeli, but I've been living in the States for the last 10 years. That's my third startup, and I think the reason why we co-founded DoControl, it's not just myself. I have a partner. His name is Adam. Adam is based out of New York. I live in Miami. And basically two things happened. I used to work in a company that acquired my previous company, and they shared a bunch of sensitive stuff to my email. And what happened is, I opened it with my own mobile device, and what happened is my Gmail account was the default email, right? So obviously I was trying to open those documents, but I did not have any permission because it was not the corporate account. And naively, what I did is I just asked for permission because I want to review those assets, right? And then the other side, the company, the corporate, they saw my name, Onri Weinberg, and they just said, okay, we know this guy, let's just approve it. And they didn't even notice it came from a Gmail account. So that was one trigger. The second trigger came from Adam. Adam, my partner, he was a Google product manager working on their DLP products, right? And he was building a product to compete with AWS Growth Cloud. And every day, at the end of the day, or in the middle of the day, the security, the corporate team came to him and say, hey, Adam, did you remove permission to this vendor and this vendor and that vendor? And everything was so manual and so tedious. And then we said to ourselves, while having coffee and I don't know, brunches in New York, we said, we got to do something about it. There's no way that those two top companies are working like that. And if it's happening for those companies, we assume it's happening to the other rest of the companies in the world. And basically what we've done is we started to ask questions, how can it be? Because, there were like DLPs and CASBs and other solutions out there that were supposed to prevent that from happening. But guess what? It wasn't that good enough. And it's still not good enough. And this is why we co-founded DoControl.
Yeah, I think the thing that I love, and this is a question that I've been kind of talking with different vendors about, because there's a lot of new cool tech that's out there right now, but not all of it is solving real problems. Not all of it, honestly, is something that the companies and organizations that I work with are necessarily looking for, right? Because it doesn't attack a real true need. So I think just because a company has cool technology doesn't necessarily mean that it's a marketable product, right? So I love the fact that you guys are actually going after something that's definitely real. And I love the first, because I find it happens all the time where you've got all these multiple logins on your phone, especially, and you just want to access something. So how does that happen? So
and also, if I may answer, I may add to my answer. Think about it, Matt. I'm considered me and Adam, we consider to be more of a sophisticated user, a savvy user.
Yeah.
If it happens to us, we are pretty sure. That's from another sitcom. Pretty sure that it's happening. You got what I mean. So we're pretty sure that it's happening for the rest of those guys out there and ladies.
Yeah. That's a good point, because I think we oftentimes do kind of look at things from our security lens, and we're pretty, I mean, this is our life. We're pretty smart about this stuff, but there's a whole lot of things that, like, my mom, for example, is not ever going to think about some of that stuff right when they're logging in. So, yep. So
I'll start off with the first question.
Yeah, go for it.
How does your product work? Right. So even, we're a larger healthcare system. We're going through merging two medium-sized healthcare companies, right? It's a lot of work, especially with some big go lives coming up. Inheriting part of the other company's issues, right, is, where was shadow IT happening, right? Is it still currently happening? How much did they move from on-prem? How much to the cloud? With your tool and knowing how complicated SaaS is for getting actionable data, right, from SaaS solutions, how does your solution connect to, say, something like, Box, GitHub, Okta, stuff like that?
Great question. I just want to make sure that everybody knows when they hear it or see it, we didn't plan any question. I don't know what kind of a curveball you're going to throw at me, so I'm going to be very.
We're professionals, man. We're professionals.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I'm trying to level set expectation with the audience and see. So basically, if you think about it, I'm not here to sell, our product, but I'm here to educate, because there are a lot of other folks out there, even like yourself, Matt, and Aaron, and other security folks that, they live under conception that, they have those products, they have the problems, and, they need to check a box because this is how it's going to work. But the world is changing so dynamically. Things are happening so fast, technologies that we are adopting, right? And the way that people are doing their businesses. And if you take the world prior to pandemic and post-pandemic, people were working from the office, suddenly they're working from home. You need to change that, right? People are working a lot with freelancers and vendors, and they collaborate even more. How do you protect that, right? And there is the on-prem side and there is the cloud side. A lot of companies are moving and shifting to the cloud. We in DoControl, we choose a position. We are trying, we have a clear ICP about who we want to target. We know where we can show value right off the bat, immediately. Because we're a SaaS company and we deal with SaaS products, it's going to be very hard for us to sell to an on-prem organization. If they're moving to the cloud and going to adopt SaaS, we can have a conversation. But I think we're going to see the results or revenue for DoControl in a year or 2 years from now. It's not something immediate. And because we are not, it's not like we're a non-profit organization. We want to show money. We want to show our investors how we grow the company. And we want to bring value right away. So we try to tackle those companies that usually were born into the SaaS environment, or they use like 80 or 90% like SaaS tools in order to drive their business. Because if you think about it, at the end of the day, what pays security, IT, all of those, it's the business. And you don't want to make sure that you don't hurt the business. You don't stop the business enablement. You want to make sure that they flourish and they drive as fast as possible. But at the same time, you want to put those guardrails in place that, they don't take a big U-turn and then, boom, you have a big security accident and you have a big data leakage, right? So this is our thesis. This is our philosophy, and this is what we had on paper before we co-founded this company in a PowerPoint. We did a very heavy investigation, before launching this company. We talked to almost like 50 to 100 security practitioners, from CISOs to CIOs in the New York area, all kind of verticals, health tech, fintech, hospitals, banks, and so on. And we try to understand what's out there in the market. What are the plans moving forward to the future? How do they see that? And, it's inevitable. What if you're on-prem, you're going to move to the cloud eventually, right? Maybe you're going to split it, whatever, but you're going to be there. In order to drive productivity, you're going to use SaaS application, whether if you want it or whether you don't want it, right? The world is divided into two. You have the Microsoft ecosystem and you have the Google, right? This is where most of the ecosystem, this is where most of your corporate intellectual property, is stored, right? Obviously, you have Salesforce as
100%.
well. All of your Salesforce, your customer, you mentioned GitHub, the repository, you mentioned Box. It's the same thing. Maybe you have different type of assets, but at the end of the day, this is your intellectual property. It can be a board recording that is being stored in Zoom. It can be a product roadmap that's in Google Drive, or your financials numbers in the SharePoint site. It doesn't really matter. It's your intellectual property. It's your secret stuff that you don't want others to be, to have access to it. I'm not even talking about externally or publicly available. What about internally? Sometimes you have ethical walls. You have people that you don't want, you know, you have HR announcement that you want to keep secret, but someone just click on a button and it's available to everybody. And if someone is getting that link, oh no, what's happening here? So this is what we want to prevent. We want to make sure that you have those guards in place, that everybody understands who has access to what at any given time, and you have the ability to remediate that access, like we call it like spring cleaning for now, for everything that happened in the past, and make sure to put those guardrails moving forward to the future with workflows. We call it workflows because this is our proprietary technology. We have a few patents on it. And basically, we want to put those workflows in place. Think about it as a SOAR that is tied directly to your data. And you ask a little bit of how we are built and how we are integrated. We are an API-based platform. So basically, to be up and running with DoControl, it's like a matter of minutes, right? And then our entire infrastructure or architecture is event-based Durian platform. So think about a company size of 1,000 employees, 10,000, doesn't really matter. Think about like 10 most critical SaaS applications that every organization uses, right? Think about how many events are happening in 1 hour, 1 day, or 1 week. They download, they share, they edit, they review, they deleting. It's enormous amount of events. We are able to capture all of those events, filter between the noise, give business context to it, and I can elaborate a little bit more about what's business context to it, and then taking action on it. Involve the employee, involve the manager, and so and so. Everything is streamlined through automation, and it's not just visibility, it's action, remediation around it. And that's something which is very, very powerful to DoControl.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my very next question, was around the remediation piece, because another issue that I'm seeing with some of the solutions that are out in multiple spaces is they'll tell you you've got a lot of problems, but they won't always help you fix them or give you ways of fixing them or whatever. And so then you wind up as a security team with like, oh, great, I have 5,000 things I need to go fix and no idea or no way to go out and do it. So talk a little bit more maybe about how you can help, put up those guardrails and those workflows and some of the remediation of stuff that's out there.
I will elaborate. And before that, before we started the company, we met with a bunch of like very high level executives from top security companies that everybody knows, right? And we met with one of the co-founders of like the top cybersecurity they can possibly think of, the CEO and co-founder. And then he told us, when you go to RSA or any other shows, you see all of those vendors and everybody's talking about visibility. Visibility is super important. We don't neglect that. But the way that we build DoControl, the foundation, were all around the remediation. That's the hardest part. So think about connecting to a company that you don't have any visibility, but you only have remediation capabilities. It sounds absurd, right? But that was the heavy lift for us. So we built that infrastructure of remediation connecting to these events, and then we added the visibility on top of that after. So it took us a long time to build the remediation capabilities. And the way that it works today, and I mentioned earlier about the business context, if you think about it, you have so many data points around your users that you're not taking advantage today, right? Think about your HRIS system. You have an employee that is doing some kind of an action, but most cases, the people don't even know that this employee is about to let go. The company is about to let go this employee. He's on a PEEP program. He's been 4 years in the company. Maybe he's thinking about the next steps. So we have this context that we can get to every event, and we can tie to every event that this user is generating, right? We can connect to your Okta environment, to your AD. We know that this employee that just shared a download, whatever, is from the finance group, or alternatively, maybe it's from the marketing group. That gives you another business context to the action of the user. Think about all of those PII, PHI, and all of those classification that you have already built in your data that we can either digest or invest or find by yourself. That's another layer of context, right? Think about the EDR that is sending signals about like a user that is touching or using a malicious file. We can tie everything together to streamline it into our workflows and take action upon them. So just
are you doing that with metadata tagging? Like, well, how are you getting those data points to then be able to create rules around them to take that action?
Great question. So we don't want to take the liability of storing all the data and start processing it, and we don't want to go back to the, I don't want to say old-fashioned, but the DLP play, because DLP, you know, Adam, my partner, he's product DLP manager, right? It's a mathematical problem,
DLP
right?
can be a mess.
It can be a mess. And then what happens, and I had like a few conversations just the other day with the customers that we are going to onboard. They want to do the DLP scanning for us to scan the entire ecosystem. We can do that. But then I asked him, okay, so we're going to scan all of your infrastructure, let's say Google Drive, Box, or I don't know, SharePoint, right? What are you going to do with like 10 million line items with like PII? What are you going to do with it the day after? And then he scratched his head. It took like 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And he said, yeah, but we need to know about it. We need to know about it. That's okay. You need to know about it. But let's be realistic. What is it that you need to know about it if it's leaving your organization? So we can do two things. First of all, once we connect it to a company, we read only the metadata. We have our own algorithm to identify if there's like what's it sensitive, how the sensitive model behind those assets, whether if it's a GitHub repository, a SharePoint site, a Google file, or even an encryption file that was uploaded into a public Slack channel. We have a way to understand the metadata of those assets. Take into consideration that we bring all of the business context that I just mentioned earlier. Because if someone is sharing a financial asset and is about to leave the company and he's sharing it with his own personal email, we can close the loop without even doing a scanning. Why does he need to share like the company P&L with his own personal email and he's leaving the company? You don't need to run a DLP scan for that, right? Make sense? So there are many more examples like that. But let's assume that, you know, we want to take the extra level, right? The extra steps. We can do DLP scanning on the fly. So let's say, Aaron, you're sharing something. We can download this asset, pre-compute, run for a PII, whatever, maybe a specific regex terms that you're looking to find, and we can let you know with a high probability from 0 to almost 100% if we can see that in those assets, in the content itself, without downloading it to us. That's not enough.
All right, I got your first curveball, and maybe it's probably, this is where from what you were saying, this might be more Adam's area. So if you don't want to get in the weeds with it, that's okay. One of the problems, and this was one of the areas that I've done projects on, one of the problems with inline DLP is limits, right?
Perfect.
File limits is a thing in inline DLP. So here's your first your first curveball. How are you solving for that, right? Where you have major players like Proofpoint, Microsoft, you know, you name it, that have limits on the file size. You could do an inline scanning.
I like those curveballs. So I'll start with answering. Let's see if I handle it correctly. And if not, you know, well, TBD, I'll send answers.
Adam's not going to yell at you later like, oh my God.
I know. He's yelling at me all day long. So now what's another yell? So I'll answer that. So first of all, we are not inline. We are an API. So everything happens after the fact, but it's like milliseconds or minutes away, depending on the SaaS application. That's the first thing. We do have limitation to some kind of the file size. You know, if you want to scan something now on the fly that is like 20 gigabytes, maybe it's going to be a problem. But most cases, it's okay. This is something that we can take care of. And the limitation you're talking about, think about all the events that are coming in. The way that DoControl works with those SaaS applications, we build the heavy lifting. We did the native connectivity with those SaaS applications. We're an approved vendor with all of them. By the way, with Slack, we are an official Slack DLP partner. I think there are like 10 or 12 companies out there today. DoControl is one of them, alongside Proofpoint, alongside Zscaler and others. The way that we work compared to others is the following. Because we're an API, what we do is for every event that it's happening, we get those events like a push notification, like an SMS. Think about it. Hey, DoControl, Matt just did this. Hey, DoControl, Aaron just downloaded this. Hey, DoControl. We get bombarded with millions and trillions of events. It's not like some of the names that you mentioned here, that they're calling the SaaS application and ask, dear SaaS application, can you tell me what happened with marketing department or with Matt in the last 20 seconds, in the last 1 hour, in the last 2 days? They can do that, but they're going to hit a wall after a while because they cannot do that for all assets. They cannot do that for all users, and they cannot do that in near real time. So what happens is you'll be able to get a response from one of those players that you mentioned earlier, but you'll get it like 2 hours later and sometimes a week and a half later. And there's a lot of things that can happen in between. Unlike DoControl, we turn it around. Our philosophy that, throw at us all of the events. Think about it, a lot of events, different events. GitHub events are very different than SharePoint, very different than Zoom, very different than Salesforce. So we normalize all of that data into one unified data layer. We add all of the business context that I mentioned earlier, and then we know how to scan and to surface the right things in the right manner on the right time in near real time. And the last part, which I did not mention earlier, is we have the ability to also reach out to the end user and say, hey, Aaron, are you sure you want to share this SharePoint site with matt@gmail.com? And you can ignore, that's okay. We can time it out. You can say approve.
So you're saying something like a sort of attestation page, right? Like you have this particular. I'm going to walk through that scenario. So I have an API to Box that's only approved for marketing use. So I'm giving you a real use case, right? It's
Box
maybe not. It may or may not be Box because I have to obfuscate stuff. But let's just say a file transfer, right?
Okay.
But the marketing team, for reasons of sharing with the external vendor, has this, right? That's why it's not on an internal system.
Correct.
So you're saying what you could do is then in your rules, your tagging rules that you tie back to AD and everything else, I'm going to tag that marketing is an approved one for this API workflow. And then you're saying because you use metadata tagging on the ingestion points on the API, that's how you're going to filter it rather than like I'm connected to 10 APIs that are feeding 1,000 events a minute. How are you going to sift through that? Because then that to me makes sense, right? Where you're doing, you can take in that much data, but your metadata, you're doing your meta tagging at a higher level, so you can at least funnel some of that aggregate data out.
100%. We slice and dice the data so it will be relevant for every use case that the customer needs. So let's say Box, just for an example, and it can be any other, right? But Box is a sharing platform. Sometimes, your SharePoint environment or OneDrive or Google is closed and you say, I want to use Box or Dropbox for the sake of example, right? What happens is you are using that platform in order to share your content or your intellectual property with people outside of your organization. What we see, and that's happened in most cases, if you think about it, no one goes back in time and remove permission. It remains as is. And the funny thing is, even if you deprovision those users, internal users, from Okta, from your AD, whatever, everything that they've done a second before you deprovision them remains as is. It doesn't deal with that problem of overexposure, oversharing. It's like a ticking time bomb. So what we can do is we can set rules as granular as your imagination can think of. Let's say for the marketing team, everything that they share with Gmail, walk it off after 1 hour. For the marketing team, everything that they share with vendorx.com, because we have a contract for 3 months, rock it off after, set a timer for 3 months from now. And
are you doing that inside your platform, or this is functionality built in your API that connects, say, to a box that then sets the time limit, right? Because by almost all your file sharing programs now have the ability to time out links. But I'm like, do you have, is part of your value that you can do it within your ecosystem rather than having to reach out to Box to expire it there?
Yes, everything is happening in our ecosystem, and you can set one rule that will work for, let's say, Google Drive, SharePoint, you set Box, or maybe you want to delete a DM in Slack. Everything is being done within DoControl. And we send and we transmit all of this communication to those SaaS applications, and everything happens in near real time from a milliseconds to a few seconds to a minute, depending on the SaaS application. But you mentioned something that those tools have like those time limits. From what we know, and maybe I can get educated here, it's a pain to set those. It's not granular as you want it to be. It doesn't have any business context. It doesn't involve the end user. And now go run it in like 5, 6, 7 different platforms. How are you going to do that? It's a massive problem that we see. And think about the future. We can do schedule workflows to the future. So you can decide something now that will happen in May of 2025, and you don't even need to remember that. You have those boundaries, you have those guardrails, you set it up, you set and forget. Something is out of the norm, you don't need to log into DoControl. We're going to push it to your SIEM, to your SOAR, whatever you're working with. And if it's an anomaly or an insider threat or an alert that is something, use it, you get alert anywhere that you like. And lastly is we have customers that are working with ticketing systems like Jira, or Snow, ServiceNow, and so on. You want everything to be streamlined through Snow? That's okay. We have those examples today. Work with Snow. DoControl will take all of the remediation part and the alerting, and the approval will be in your day-to-day ecosystem. Super granular. If you think about
does that go both ways? Do you guys have the ability to then send your own alerts? Because I could see a scenario if that, right, is let's say, especially if you're connected to AD, I see a scenario, I'll use me 12 years ago, right? I was a front-end web developer. I moved into a business analyst position. Therefore, think about it. There's access that I don't need anymore and access I do need anymore.
12
in
years
that
ago,
particular
like 20,
situation.
when you were 25, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. You get points for that one. Can it be, so then can you be proactive? You set that rule. There's a user permissions change.
100%.
Then you alert, and then a ticket can be created in ServiceNow, say for your identity operations team to, hey, go remediate these access steps.
100%. 100%. If you think about the tools think about the CASBs and DLPs that were built like 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I don't even know when, right? The level of exposure of the API, webhooks, the infrastructure to accept those events on near real time, it's like the technology has changed dramatically. And what was a good fit like 10 years ago, I'm not even going 15 years ago, 10 years ago, are unparalleled to what's happening in 2024. It's a whole different game. And and I'm not here to say that we can support every SaaS in the world. We support the most 20 critical SaaS applications that every organization uses. It's not a bulletproof, but it will give you answer to protect 80 or 90% of your most critical data that are being stored in those SaaS applications. And this is a very advanced technology that can help you, one hand, put the guardrails, make sure that you're secured. And the second thing is make sure that the business is not getting hurt. Because how many times, people are trying to send stuff, share stuff, I need to open tickets, I need to do this, why are you blocking me, why are you, let them do their work. But on the other hand, don't, because at the end of the day, if someone wants to leak data or steal data, they will find a way. I can take my phone, we are here to protect like the 90%.
Can't really prevent against a malicious employee.
Exactly.
They'll find a way.
That one is, I don't care what anybody says, malicious employee stuff is more reactive than proactive.
Exactly. And also because we think about it, we're collecting all of the events from all of the SaaS applications. So we have a lot of teams, not just the security and IT, but legal team, that they want to investigate and understand all of the logs and the events that are coming in. Because we are processing all the raw JSON events from all of those SaaS applications, and we enrich it with our own proprietary metadata and data and so on, they can find out exactly what user has been doing in the SaaS application and where it started, what he's done, where did he send it. Everything is in our platform. So that's like a good, evidence to the user's activity. And the thing is, we don't need to get to there. We can alert about that way before that. And we're adding, as we speak, like an IDTR, angle to it. We can give risk scoring to users because we have so much information about the users, their tenure, status, what department, what kind of assets there, who are they sharing with, IP, you name it. This information is scattered all over the place. We can consolidate.
You're collating that data. Do we have the ability through your APIs to then push that back, right? So being in healthcare, I have more regulations, one that I can shake a stick at, two, storage limitations and everything else. Do you guys have the means to, okay, I'm going to use you guys for, say, 30-day searchable, hot, right? But I
You
need
mentioned
these type of HR events logged and pushed
our
to
entire, yeah,
Splunk or Elastic or something like that. Can
yes.
you then push that data to another spot?
Our entire platform is by GraphQL, so everything is API based. So if you want to slice and dice information you want to consume and push it to your system, be my guest. The opposite. We like that. We encourage you to do that.
They could even run it through Cribble and into a data lake, since we're talking about cool, new technology.
Matt was not paid for that plug.
I'm just saying there's some cool tech out there now, but we don't get paid for any of our plugs. What's up with that?
Being honest.
So what was the? I'll show I'll throw a bone out to Paul Dumbleton, right, Aaron, this morning that we at the event we were at, where he said that security needs to go from the Department of No, like NO, to the Department of No, KNOW, right? So enabling business, knowing what's happening, but being able to make sure that we're not stopping business. I mean, if security is done correctly, we should actually be allowing the business to go to market faster, better, and more secure, right?
Transparent. The best security is transparent security.
Look, I think if I go back on our board decks and our investor decks or whatever, from day one we said we're a security company, but we are business enabler. Why? Because my background is mostly business, and I know how critical it is to push a business, to be fast, time to respond is so critical. I'll give you two examples. Today I just came from a meeting. I'm not going to name names, but it's a company that is a little bit traditional. They live on-prem, and that's okay. This is their business, and they want to move into the cloud. And we started a POC with them to show them our capabilities. And basically, we asked one of the guys over there, just share a document with us, and so we can show you how we can react to that, how we can capture these events and everything. It took 6 business days just to approve a domain to share something with. And now multiply by 50 to 100 requests every week, you will slow the business. You get my point. That's one thing. Second thing, we're working with one of the most sophisticated technology companies in the world. I don't know, 7,000, 8,000 people, headquarters in New York. They send more than 80 to 100,000 messages to the employees through the DoControl platform every month, asking about their actions or about their sharing actions through Google Drive, to OneDrive, and so on. Why are they doing that? Because they don't have a choice. They will not limit, they will not block, they will not start opening tickets. They want the people to work as fast as possible and reach the limit.
They're working on the trust model. Yep.
Exactly. And they see DoControl not as another API CASB or a DLP or a SaaS, CSSPM, whatever. They see us as an education tool. Because and everything I'm saying, it's like backed by numbers. We see month over month, 5% more employees are using DoControl or reacting to DoControl messages through Slack, through email, because they understand. 7 times more users are rejecting their action instead of approving it. Why? Because they want to share it with Matt Nelson, and they share it with Matt Belson, because they were just running out of the office and they put an email and they did a mistake, and they shared something publicly and they did not meant to do that. And that's the funny thing is we are a B2B company. We get and we have screenshots of employees in those companies say, hey, DoControl is an amazing tool. It just prevented me from doing a huge mistake, sharing the financial projection with this Gmail account instead of the other folks' account.
Yeah, that was actually another topic that we had this morning at this event that we were at was, we always expect our users to be like security gurus, but in fact, they're like finance people and accounts payable people and HR people. And so none of them, outside of the malicious ones, but a normal employee doesn't want to do things to expose their company, but they don't always know, right? And they don't always have the tools in place to be able to assist them to not. So giving them the intelligence to say, hey, here's something that you probably shouldn't do, I think is really critical, because we expect a lot. I think companies sometimes expect way too much out of their end users when they're getting paid to do accounts payable. They're not getting paid to do security, right?
Exactly. And those people, they care about a few things, like 2 or 3 things. They care, first of all, I want to do my job. I want to do it correctly. I want to go home. That's it. And obviously, maybe some of them want to do more, but that's the majority. Security, I'm not sure if it's top 5 or even top 10. They don't even think about it. They don't think about the consequences. So what we are saying is the way that we operate, we democratize the way people are doing their work with security. That's the first thing. And the second thing is suddenly you have a security, you have an army of security professionals within your organization that are thinking about exposure, thinking about data leaks, thinking about those kind of things. Something that you did not have before, because modern companies, you hire people, you fire people, you hire people, you fire people. You have those quarterly security reviews. You have those playbooks that you write, and then you send them all. Did you read the guidelines? People don't have time to read guidelines. They just want to finish their work as fast as possible. I hope it makes sense, but we see it a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely does. Well, Aaron, I learned some things today. First, I learned that you and I need to have better friends to go out to lunches and brunches with, because we never talk about starting up cool companies like DoControl, like Onri was doing. So we got to work on our friend base. And the other thing I learned is that if you want to be in the know, KNOW, about the data that you have in your SaaS applications, who's accessing it, what you're doing, putting some workflows and controls around it, then you should most definitely talk to our friends over at DoControl. So Omri, this one could have gone on forever, as like all the fun conversations could, but we really appreciate your time today. For those that are watching, please like, subscribe, comment, do all of that fun YouTube stuff. And we will see everyone again real soon for episode 43. Thanks, everybody.